The leap that didn't land. The arena was electric, cameras flashing, and the whole world watching. After all, this was the Olympics. She sprinted down the runway, her body a blur of precision and power. The launch, twist, flight, and then midair, something was wrong. Her body spun, but her mind lost track. For the first time in her life, she didn't know where she was. She landed, somehow, on her feet, but everything inside her was shaking. Not just from the stunt, from the truth. She felt she was no longer safe. And now she had a decision to make. One no one expected. She wasn't just an athlete. She was the one everyone was counting on. The face of her sport, the gold medal favorite, the unstoppable force who had defied gravity and shattered records. She had trained her entire life for this moment. But what the world couldn't see is the invisible storm inside her. The crushing pressure of perfection, the mental fog that clouded her once clear instincts. The grief of losing a beloved aunt. News had arrived mid-Olympics, right when she was supposed to be at her strongest. And now, at the peak of her career, she was faced with a challenge no vault could prepare her for. Choosing between the world's expectations and her own well-being. People whispered. Some accused her of quitting, and some said she was letting her team down. Some couldn't understand why the greatest athlete in the world suddenly stepped back. But what they didn't realize was this. She wasn't quitting. She was choosing to live. She knew that pushing forward when her mind and her body were disconnected wasn't bravery. It was reckless. She did something revolutionary. She spoke the truth out loud. I say put your mental health first, because if you don't, you're not going to enjoy the sport and you're not going to succeed as much as you want to, she would later say. In a world that tells us to keep going at all costs, she did the unthinkable. She stopped. And in that moment, she flipped the definition of strength upside down. She stepped away from the team's events, allowing other athletes to take her place. She stepped away from the spotlight, allowing others to enjoy it. And the world watched, waiting to see if she'd come back. When she finally did, it was on the balance beam. She wasn't just competing for medals anymore. She was competing for herself. She performed with clarity, control, and grace. Not the high-flying stunts that she was known for, but something more powerful. Presence. When she won the bronze, it wasn't just a medal. It was a message. Victory isn't about never breaking down. It's about knowing when to step back, regroup, and rise again on your own terms. The girl who twisted midair and found herself lost. The woman who stood at the peak of her sport and chose health over hype. The champion who taught the world that real strength is knowing your limits. That woman is Simone Biles. A gymnast who didn't just redefine the boundaries of a sport, she refined the boundaries of strength itself. We celebrate the wins we can see, trophies, records, highlight reels, but the deepest victories happen in silence. The moment that you say no to what is breaking you, the choice to rest when the world says push harder, the courage to protect your mind even when it costs you the applause. Simone Biles showed us something the world desperately needed to learn. Mental health isn't a side note. It's the foundation. So ask yourself, what do your boundaries look like? And what would it look like to choose health over the hustle today? Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me, as always, Doc Jess.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here.
I remember when this happened. It was just a few years ago at the Olympics when she stepped down. It was a team event that she was competing in, and she was the favorite. She was the best out of the team. And when she stepped back because her head just wasn't in the game, they roasted her, saying she was letting her team down and all of this stuff. But what she really did was give her team the best chance of winning.
Right.
Because if she wasn't in the right headspace, she would not be able to perform. So it was better for her team for her to step back and allow those others to step forward and win.
Yeah. And, the loss of a close family member and the grief that hits, and a lot, I don't know if everybody knows her background, but she does have a pretty traumatic background, raised in foster care. And, that's a great story. And my youngest daughter just watches everything she can about Simone Biles. She loves her.
Oh, how did you not know who this was then?
I knew once you said defied gravity. I was like, oh, that's Simone Biles.
Yeah, I remember when this first came out and she was getting roasted. My first initial reaction was she did the right thing.
Yeah.
And eventually, the media caught on and people caught on and they celebrated with her for doing that. But the initial reaction from people was not positive. It was really negative.
Well, that's also our human nature, right? Is like we fill up the story in our head with assumptions. If we don't have all the details right away, our natural tendency is to fill in those gaps. And that's when judgment comes. That's when assumption comes, assuming, right? And it usually creates a negative emotional response or reaction. And so throw that little nugget in there. Try to not fill in those blanks or those assumptions until you have the full story.
And think about when you're in that sport or any high pressure situation, could be your job, your work, surgery that you perform, or even just paperwork that you have to file and put out. If you're not in the right mental headspace, if your mind is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline and all those other emotions from something, loss of a loved one or something traumatic, you're not going to be making good decisions. And especially for her, you have to be 100% mental clarity when you are doing those floor routines, because you are flying really high into the air, doing extreme maneuvers with your body. And if you're not paying attention, you could land that improperly and really get hurt. And then that would cost your team.
Yeah.
So the fact that she landed was like, I don't know how I just landed that. It was muscle memory, but it spooked her enough to be like, okay, I need to take a break because my head's not in the game. That was the right move.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a lot of toxic dysfunction in the gymnastics world because of how high pressure it is, and there's a lot of great gyms out there, and there's a lot of horrific gyms out there. I've actually counseled several young adults and late teens who are overcoming trauma from their high competition level gymnasts.
Really?
And their coaches are just, I mean, their coaches can be very, very dysfunctional. And so if you have girls or boys in gymnastics, make sure that you're doing it in a healthy way. There's a one gym in Auburn, Inspire or Ignite, I forget. I'll look it up, but they are very, very healthy. They push mental health. They push body image, confidence, and other gyms, other coaches would be the ones to tell Simone Biles, suck it up, buttercup, and move on. Deal with this later, or just get over it. Right. And that's just not the healthiest.
Yeah, I got to work with a bunch of Olympic athletes.
Of course you did.
There's a little jealousy and envy coming over here.
No.
Woo! I'm feeling it.
No.
I got to work with some professional athletes, some Olympians, a couple times when I was working with Hope Sports in Mexico. And
okay, I remember when they did this. They asked you to come and be a part of their team.
Right.
Okay.
And so I got to work with these guys, and the interesting thing about it is that they peak when they're like 16 to 18.
Yeah.
Like they're at the top of their career, and then literally everything else is downhill from there. And when you look at like child actors, it's kind of the same thing where they peak at this really young age, and then nothing else they do in their life hits that level of attraction, that
Yeah, I
level
see that.
of exhilaration and applause and accolades. And so then they really kind of just fold after that. And what I loved about Hope Sports, my good friend Guy, is that he helps them find purpose beyond their sport.
That's really
what
cool.
This whole thing is about.
I love that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. He brings in mental health professionals to come and talk to them about finding identity outside of that. He brings in other professional athletes that have done that, which was really cool. I got to meet So I got to actually meet Frank Shamrock, who has done a really good job of finding identity outside of fighting. Him and his brother, they fought in the UFC in the early years. They both grew up fighting. I didn't realize they weren't actually brothers. They grew up on a boys' ranch together.
Oh, like a foster care.
Yeah, but it was
Boys' ranch.
It was a boys' ranch for misbehaving kids.
Yeah.
And he grew up on this ranch in Southern California with this old guy who was a prize fighter and taught these kids how to fight and taught them how to have discipline, respect. And then a lot of those kids went on to do great things in their life. And Frank and Ken, they were brothers in the WWF, when they were doing that. And then also in the UFC. So they made great careers out of fighting. And he would come and speak about how he found his identity outside of that. And he does a lot of work now with young men, trying to get them into the sport and get disciplined, just like, the old man did for him. So it's really, really cool when they bring in people like that who've been through it and come out on the other side. So,
Yeah, that's really cool.
it's kind of like what we do here, right?
Yeah.
Like we've been through it when it comes to PTSD, and now we're on the other side.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean we don't deal with it still, but we're definitely on the other side of the healing process. And now we try to help other people.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to continue trying to help as we enter into week 4 of our five session series on We Build, Strengthening the Mind for the Hard Things in Life. And so we're on 4 out of 5 this week, and we're talking about how we build boundaries and guardrails. And our focus this week is that mental strength isn't just about pushing through all the time. It's also about knowing what to protect and what to walk away from, and guarding your emotional, mental, and spiritual capacity by setting boundaries. And we're going to talk about understanding that burnout isn't always about doing too much. Sometimes it's about doing too much of the wrong things.
There you go.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the myths about boundaries, like what culture or wrong thinking that's tied to boundaries, and right thinking about boundaries, right? So boundaries are not walls, they're wisdom. And this is like one of my favorite analogies that Sergeant Q has shared with me. Why don't you talk about your guardrails?
So guardrails. So I actually can't take credit for this. So Pastor Troy did a sermon on boundaries, gosh, had to have been 10, 12 years ago. And I heard him speak on it. And he was speaking specifically about pornography and putting boundaries in place, using technology to put boundaries in place to protect yourself from destroying your life when it came to pornography. And that's specifically what he was talking about. But when he spoke on this idea of boundaries, I saw it you could use this analogy for any boundary you put in your life. And so here's how it goes. When you're driving in your car and you see guardrails that are on the road, where do they put those guardrails?
On the edge of the cliff.
On the edge, right? On dangerous areas where there's going to be a steep drop off on the side or a sharp corner, oncoming traffic, things that are really, really dangerous. You're going to see guardrails. You don't see guardrails on a flat surface where, in the middle of Iowa, the cornfields just go for miles. No guardrails there. But here in the Northwest, there's lots of guardrails because there's mountains, sharp turns, cliffs, rivers. So they put guardrails up. And here's the really cool thing about a guardrail. It's in a dangerous area. So that way, if you do go off the road, you hit this guardrail, it beats your car up a little bit, but it pushes you back onto the road. So you may have to do some repair work. You may have to get the car fixed, but you're not going to die. You're not going to completely destroy your car. When we put guardrails in our life or boundaries, it does the same thing. They're areas of our life that we know are a little bit dangerous, a little bit dicey, and we put these guardrails in so that way if we do bump up against them, we get a little bit of damage. We've got to do some repair work in our life, but we're not going to go so far off the cliff that we die or cause serious damage to our life. And so thank you, Pastor Troy. That was an amazing analogy, one that I use all the time when I'm talking to veterans, specifically around the use of alcohol and drugs and sex, and how that you need to put healthy guardrails around those areas so that way you don't destroy your life. Another great analogy that I heard is specifically around sex, which was that sex is hot and it's passionate and it belongs inside of a fireplace. If you take that fire and you bring it into the middle of the room, you're going to burn down the house. And it was an example of sex in the marriage bed. Like sex is designed for marriage. And if you keep it in those confines, it brings warmth and health to the whole house, to the whole family, to your whole life. But when you take it outside of where it belongs, it'll burn your house down. It'll burn your marriage down.
That's really good.
I just thought like, wow.
Oh, I love that.
Those are two really great both of them not mine. I've stolen them from different people, but they are amazing. All right, sorry, I went off on a tangent.
I love that, right?
That's for somebody. I don't know why, but that's for somebody because that was not in my notes. I hadn't prepared talking about.
Yeah, I love that one.
And that fire analogy.
Boop, 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 boop. Deposit.
Yep, exactly. Like boop, download, like here. So that's for somebody I know.
Yeah, and you guys, it's so important to know that you're not being unkind when you set boundaries. You're being wise. Boundaries define where your responsibilities end and another person's start.
Say that again, Jess. That's really good.
Boundaries are about where your responsibilities end and where another person starts. Okay, and so that's how healthy relationships thrive. So when you set a boundary with a loved one, a genuine healthy boundary, you're telling that loved one, I love you enough, I want you in my life. If you didn't love somebody, you would kick them to the curb and move on with your life. So when you set a boundary, that is genuine, true, authentic communication that I love you enough that we just have to set simple boundaries, right? I mean, God created the heavens and the earth, boundaries, land and the sea, boundaries. Like he's literally the creation of the earth is created with different boundaries. And so it's not about controlling someone else. It's about controlling yourself.
Yeah, those boundaries are there to protect us. So water doesn't flood the whole earth. Just like we have an ionosphere, which captures all of the radiation from the sun. It's a boundary that God put in place so he didn't fry all of us.
Right.
If we didn't have an ionosphere, it'd be like Mars. It would just be a death planet. Nothing would survive.
And it's important to understand that our capacity isn't infinite. And what this means is you don't have unlimited emotional, mental, or spiritual energy. Nobody does. And pretending that you do leads to anxiety, resentment, and burnout. Okay?
You know what it also does? It sets an unrealistic expectation for all of your friends and family.
Right.
And then that really damages all of them because they're like, dang, Aaron's always got it together. He never has any problems. Yeah. And then it sets an unrealistic expectation. And so when I'm genuine and honest and authentic about my mental health journey, it allows my friends and family to do the same.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it strong people know limits and how to honor them, right? Not our weaknesses, but because they want to show up well for the things that actually matter. And so one of the best books to read, men and women, is by Lisa Turkis. It's called My Best Yes. And she goes into just the journey of learning how to give your best yes. And it takes a lot of no's to be able to give your best yes. And so this is, especially if you're in ministry, this is something that you kind of have to learn the hard way on your own. And the scriptures are clear. It says to not cast your pearls before swine or oil.
No, it's pearls.
Pearls. Okay. Yeah. You know the concept. So it's important, right? And we're going to dive also into what boundaries don't mean. So like boundaries, a lot of times people get confused. Another really great book is this one.
Yes.
Boundaries, when to say yes, how to say no. And right, this is by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And the opening story in this is such a beautiful example of what a boundary is. It's a couple who's newly married. They're Christians. They saved themselves for marriage. And the husband grew up in a very toxic, abusive home. And he hasn't done 100% work on himself yet, but he's in the process. And with, the first 6 months honeymoon stage, right? And then they get in their first really big fight, and he shoved his wife. And you could tell immediately that he was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And they just stopped. They went their other ways, and she ended up writing him a really beautiful note. And she just laid it out that, I know you don't want to hurt me, and that's why I have to set this boundary. If you put your hands on me again when we get in a fight, I'm going to have a bag packed, and I'm going to leave for a certain amount of time while you go get the help that you need for anger management. I'm not leaving you. I'm supporting you. I love you. And I'm doing this because I know deep down you don't want to hurt me. And this is I don't have control over what you do with your body, but I have control over what I do, and I will have to remove myself. And he was like, yes, I understand. I agree. Right. And so another 6 months went by, and they were doing great. And he was doing a little bit of work, but not a ton, because he thought, okay, I got it under control. And then he put his hands on her again. And so she grabbed her bag and she left, and she wrote him another letter and said, again, I love you so much. I'm not leaving you. I'm here for you till death do us part. I'm not going to be able to come home until X, Y, and Z happens. And that gave him the motivation to go out and do X, Y, and Z. And he got the help that he needed. He got the anger management, the tools, and the resilience. And they have been married for 20 plus years now, right? Like, it's literally because I love you and I can't control myself from being hit by you, because you're going to hit me. But I can control being a victim of that by staying in the situation. And so boundaries aren't, I remember when I first, thought I was setting a boundary, right? I was like, you're not going to talk to me like that. How well do you think that went? Well. I'm a strong, independent. You're not going to talk to me like that. No. Hey, I don't allow people that I love and that love me to speak to me like that, because it's not loving. And so I'm going to walk away from this conversation until we're ready to have a loving, calm conversation. That's a boundary. I'm controlling myself and what I allow that happens to me. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Yeah. So, do you have any other examples of what boundaries are not?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I do. Okay. So what boundaries are not. And so this is a really clear distinction, because I see people do this all the time. And these are people who live in the victim mentality. And these are people who are just a perpetual victim of their circumstance, and they never really take accountability for their life. And so I see this happen most often with these people, although other people do it as well, where they're going to set a boundary because somebody is challenging them on their behavior. Meaning that they're out of line, they're speaking to somebody, they're doing something that's not okay, that's causing chaos in other people's lives, and somebody calls them out on it. And so instead of being self-reflective and saying, okay, maybe I should change, they just put up a boundary and say, well, I'm just going to eliminate that person from my life because they're the problem. Never taking any accountability. I see this happen so much, and people do it. And here's the phrase that I love. I love hearing this because I know right away it's a red flag. My ex is a narcissist. And so I had to stop seeing them. And I'm just thinking to myself, that is such a buzzword now. Probably less than 2 or 3% of those people are actually dating narcissists, because they're not that many in the world, okay, that are actually narcissists. You just didn't like that they made themselves a priority. And so then you call them a narcissist as a way to escape any blame for the chaos you caused in the relationship. Yes. And I see this happen so much, and social media really magnifies this. And then other people see like, oh, I can just say these buzzwords and say it's a boundary. Yeah. And now I absolve myself of any responsibility because I'm the victim. Yeah. And it's just the worst thing in the world you can do. Yeah. So if that's you today, I need you to really take a look at yourself and recognize, like, I'm at least 50% of every single problem that I have. And what can I do to change that? Yeah.
In general, right?
And so that's where boundaries can become dangerous, is when you're just setting boundaries as a way to absolve yourself from any responsibility to be a better person.
Yeah. There's an incredible specialist on YouTube. If you do think you are in a relationship with a narcissist, there's a big difference between a toxic person and a narcissist. And we all have narcissistic tendencies, right? Narcissism is just selfish, really. At the core of it, it's just being selfish. And so there's narcissistic tendencies, there's narcissistic behaviors, there's toxic behaviors, and then there's narcissistic personality disorder. And that's what these people are claiming, that my ex was a narcissist. That's meaning a narcissistic personality disorder. Like, they cannot change without like intense
And these people
help.
are highly manipulative, and it's people like that. Everybody in their life sees it. Like, they're not really fooling anybody other than themselves, because they try to manipulate every single situation that they're in. It's something that you're not going to find on TikTok.
Yeah. Yes and no. Okay, so I'm going to agree with you for the most part. And there is covert narcissists that are present, especially in church. Hear me out. There's
You would know this better than
There's covert narcissists who do everything on the outside, and they are this wonderful person. And what happens is, slowly, is behind closed doors, they start tearing their spouse down to where their spouse feels like, right, they're a completely different person behind closed doors.
Wouldn't that person be doing that to everybody in their life, though, not just their spouse?
Not always.
Oh, okay. That's where I got it wrong then.
Yeah. Eventually, right, you can track back to this person's life, and eventually you'll see a pattern of ex-girlfriends or whatever. Like, this person ends up in their whole life blaming other people for their problems. Yes. So it's never just isolated to one person. Right. No, ever. There is some sort of pattern, but a lot of the times these covert narcissists are really, really good at painting this picture of the kind of person they are, and very lovable, but behind closed doors, they are literally a monster. But it is emotional abuse is what's happening, and the spouse, the victim, becomes this, like, I mean, they become a textbook battered wife syndrome, where they are convinced that all the problems are theirs. And anyways, and then eventually when somebody starts building these boundaries for themselves, like, hey, if you're going to throw a vase across the room at me and it shatters against the wall, I'm going to have to remove myself from that situation because it feels dangerous, which it is. Right. And so when they start setting boundaries like that, their true colors start to show. And then you'll see the narcissist, it gets way worse, and they end up digging themselves in a ditch. And if you meet with a specialist who specializes in narcissistic abuse, mental control, whatever, those counselors have a very good way of helping you through the process of setting those boundaries. And textbook, every single time with a narcissist, it always ends the same. It's very interesting to watch. It's sad. It's very sad, but it's interesting to watch because certain clients, I call somebody like my supervisor and I say, hey, this is what's going on and this is what's going to happen. And it happens every single time.
So here's the debate question.
Yeah.
Do those narcissists know? Like, are they self-aware that that's what they're doing? Or are they not? So I've seen both sides, and so I'm curious what you think.
Okay, this is, and I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I'm very familiar with narcissistic tendencies, behaviors, and cluster B personality disorders, which are borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorders. These are cluster B personality disorders that all overlap. And one way that I heard a counselor say it was, somebody with genuine narcissistic personality disorder, right? It always stems from childhood trauma, where the beginning feeling of shame is so intense and so dangerous that they start setting walls up to push that shame away. And so it becomes a part of their reality that they push blame off on other people so they don't feel shame. And so eventually those lies become reality in their mind. So it's like, if you've ever known a schizophrenic who actually hear words in their mind, right? Imagine telling that person when they're having a schizophrenic episode, hey man, those voices aren't real.
And they're like, but I hear them.
No, they are real to them.
Yeah.
100% real to them. I believe that somebody with narcissistic personality disorder genuinely just does it out of a survival mechanism, and and they genuinely believe it's that other person's problem. And so that's why it's so hard, almost impossible for a narcissist to change, a genuine narcissist to change, because they don't have the capacity to actually take responsibility. And so a side note for any of my ladies or men out there married to somebody that they genuinely think is a narcissist, get with a specialist and just ask for a psych evaluation. Those people are trained to ask the right questions to really figure out if somebody has a cluster B personality disorder. And once they're presented with it, they might look at that and be like, oh my gosh, this is me. And then they open the door to getting help. Until then, you're literally arguing with a brick wall.
I'm going to have to do some research on this. I'm curious to know what professions these people gravitate toward.
Pastors.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
You already know.
Yeah.
I was thinking lawyers because they literally lie for a living. Not in a negative way. Well, I guess depends how you look at it, but.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like subtopics of narcissists. So there's covert and there's it's just a lot of different kinds that but the foundation of it is all the same. The roots are all the same. So I think the important thing here is, right, building boundaries and guardrails around toxic people is okay. Saying I'm putting up a boundary because I don't want to accept personal responsibility from somebody who's lovingly trying to convict, challenge, and encourage me to grow in a certain area is not okay. Right. And if that, I hope that makes sense. And yeah. Right. So one key skill is saying no without guilt, you guys. Learning that you're not responsible for everyone else's emotions or expectations. If you can just get that from here to here, it really helps to know, you know what? I don't have control over that person's emotions or their expectations of me. And a lot of us are raised in dysfunctional homes where the parents push off that high expectation and high standard in a dysfunctional way. And you grow up learning and surviving in that kind of unrealistic expectation of yourself. So we also want to create a margin. So we want to leave space in our lives mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so that you're not operating on the edge of breakdown all the time. And then again, emotionally distance from dysfunction. So learning to care about people without caring what's not yours to carry. And so that just means like there's certain people in our lives that we love from a distance because they participate in behaviors and dysfunction that just doesn't align with our core values, and that's okay. They see it as maybe us being self-righteous or holier than thou when we know when we put our heads down at night, it's not that at all. It's just that we just live different lives, and that's okay. We're not trying to push our values on them, and we're not expecting them to push their values on us. Make sense?
It does.
Okay. So our practice for this week, it's called the boundary circle activity, and we're going to draw 3 circles on a piece of paper. The circle 1 is what's mine, okay? What are my thoughts, my emotions, my time, my energy? That's what I have complete control over. And then circle 2 is what I influence. So like I do influence other people's choices. I don't control them, but I influence them, right? I influence my workplace culture. I influence my family dynamics, but I'm not responsible to fix all of them, okay? And then circle 3 is what's not mine at all. So other people's emotions, other people's reactions, other people's decisions, and other people's healing journey. I need to remind you of that.
I know.
It is frustrating when you have put in a ton of hard work and you're on the other side and people come to you and say, oh my gosh, I want your help, right? I had to learn to set a boundary early on that, okay, I will mentor you or work with you, right? If you're not a paying client, you just want me to mentor you. After I see you do everything I do for 3 months. So a lot of these people are in church and like, I want to be a strong woman. I'm not saying I'm a strong woman of God. I'm just saying people have come to me asking me to mentor them because of my relationship with Christ and
and they see the life that you live now and the success that you have, and they want that. Yeah, I get the same thing.
And so I say, absolutely, I would love to. So 90 days starts here. At the end of these 90 days, if I see that you go to church every time I go to church, read the books that I read, do the morning routine that I do, or like certain bare minimum things that they have to show me first they're willing to put in the work, because I'm not just a Cliff Notes person. I'm not going to just give you the Cliff Notes and then you're going to change. You have to put the work in.
It's really hard to pour into somebody's bucket when they're actively poking holes in it. It's very, very frustrating. And I dealt with that for a long time. And God showed me that I can only help those who want to be helped.
Yeah.
But I still didn't have a way to put a boundary in place. Now I do. Now anybody that wants my help, they have to go through the day one challenge. When they complete that, it's 45 days. If you can complete that in 45 days, then I'll help you. That's step one. But if you're not willing to do that on your own, then nothing that I teach you is going to stick.
Right. And that's what you even did that with me before you realized that that's what you were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It was quite by accident.
He takes us through Christian business development. And he says, before we can move on to anything, I got to see that you guys will stick to this morning routine for 45 days. And that's when my morning routine journey started. And that's when I started really gaining control over other disciplines in my life. So
it's crazy because we have control over that stuff. We're like, oh, I got this here. But then you're dropping things all the time. Like, oh, I thought I had that thing, but then I'm failing at it again. It's because we lack the discipline. And so when we do the day one challenge, we get those 45 days, we've built those routines in our brain, we're getting good dopamine. It helps us balance all of those other things, and we drop far less when we understand the discipline. So getting your brain to seek dopamine through discipline instead of distraction on your phone or on video games or on TV, that's what helps you stay consistent in your business and really in anything that you want to try and get better at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say before you do anything, sign up for day one challenge. Invest the money, invest the time, invest the discipline. Start in that. Don't you have like a guarantee?
Yeah, day1challenge.com. Oh yeah, if you complete this thing 45 days and it's automated, so I know if you've completed it. When you complete it and you say, hey, this didn't help me, I'm happy to give you your money back.
Yeah.
And the reason that I charge money is actually your benefit. I've done the research on it.
Yeah.
If I give you a free course, there's about an 8 to 10% chance that you'll actually complete it. If I charge you $500, there's a 60% chance. And if I charge you $1,000, it's a 90% chance that you're going to complete it. Mm-hmm. So when I charge you money, it's for your benefit. So your brain registers that it's valuable. So you'll actually complete it.
Sure.
And when you get to the end, you say, this didn't help me. Cool, man. Happy to give you your money back.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
It's never happened yet.
No, it's not going to. So, hey, you guys, if you got anything valuable out of this, please make sure you like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel.
As always, we want to do 3 things. We want to educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. For the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sergeant Q.
I'm Doc Jess.
And we're out.